There you go. 11 a.m. in the States, on the East Coast. It's 4 p.m. here. My name is Dennis Barker, and the show's called Free Association. Revolution Radio is listener supported, so if you can subscribe to the Patreon, if you can give a little bit of a donation to keep 2 studios running. It's run by volunteers. If you go to revolution.radio, you'll find a Patreon button and also a place for one-off donations and a place to send money orders or whatever as well on the main page there. So I don't have really an agenda for today. I'm just gonna wing it a little bit and see what happens. There might be a little bit of emotional freedom technique in here. There might be a little bit of reporting from Trafalgar Square because there's a demonstration going on there. Haven't decided on that yet. And there might be a little bit of neurolinguistic programming, which I'm going to steal from YouTube, as I am the reporting from Trafalgar Square. But I've been watching them. NLP has a slightly tarnished reputation. There are people in the NLP community that are not hugely ethical, but there's a lot of good people still in there. So I don't want to dismiss it completely on the basis that it's being used by politicians to persuade people to go to war, which was my reason for not getting involved in NLP all those years ago, or one of the reasons. I did get as far as a 2-day introductory workshop, which I think cost me £250 or something like that, which was step 1 in a 10-weekend, year-long course that was going to cost £2,000. So I decided not to pay the £2,000. I did pay the £250 for the introductory workshop. And I was doing most of the things that they were teaching me. So I decided not to go forward with it. And also I had some anxiety about it because it's used by politicians to do whatever politicians want to do. There's some persuasion techniques in there that can be, there's the ethical basis of what NLP does originally came from therapy sessions. It came from modeling, Milton Erickson, and who was the other guys? There was a Gestalt therapist in there and a family therapist in there. I don't remember the names of them, but it was 3 therapists that they were modeling to bring out the language patterns and the way they work with clients. So it started out all right. It started out as a modeling exercise for expanding the use of good techniques in therapy, and then it somewhere down the line got turned into quick dating skills exercises and things like that, which isn't really ethical. It's not anywhere near where it started from. Lots of sales techniques in there as well, sales kind of tactics and ways of using language to persuade people, which might be useful for me in my work. So it might be worth my while looking at NLP again, given that I'm not working with clients just at the moment. I'm not really doing any coaching, but I can use it in my work, and it'll pay for itself in the sales kind of training strategies or whatever that are in there, and persuasion strategies, because it'll produce some extra commission for me. Now I'm just going to check in with the chat room. Let me share my screen as well. So share computer sound, start sharing. So that should all work. I've got a bad track record with sharing my screen because it doesn't always seem to work. Certainly with YouTube, but somewhere in here there's a chat room. Here we go. So I'm not sure if anybody's listening, but if you can give me a thumbs up in the chat room, if the sound's coming through okay, just to make sure. I'm going to assume it's working unless somebody tells me otherwise. So I'm just going to carry on regardless. What I'm going to do now, I think, is... All right, so somebody is listening. Hello, Boy Solomon. Good to see you in the chat room. There's a lot of other people in the chat room at the moment. Pat Rabbit, Mr. Rowe, Eagle Flower, Mitzi, LB Borks in there as well, the jurist. All right, good. I've got a new camera gadget, whatever you call it, webcam, and it's got a microphone on it. So I'm just wanting to make sure that it's coming across clear. So that's fine as long as it is. So now the next technical issue is to share a video. So let's do that. So we'll go YouTube. And I was listening to some reporting from Trafalgar Square about an hour ago, so I know that's on here. And I've actually still got a download running as well. So if it's coming through clear, then that's a good sign. So Trafalgar Square live. And Sonia Poulton did a stream a few hours ago. So there's quite a lot of this. So I'm going to skip through to where Sonia comes in.
Amazing. We got
This was on Sean Atwood's channel.
Myself and James, the cameraman, and Trafalgar Square was already filling up. It's amazing. I haven't been to a demo this alive for a long time, Sean. It feels amazing. The vibrations are incredible. So much love for what we're doing at Brand New Tube, and just incredible. Have a look. Look around.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
So we've only just started. Imagine what this is going to be like once the speakers start going. We've got Kate Shemirani, natural nurse in a toxic world, currently speaking. I think you can see her up here.
Yep.
Yeah, just amazing. I mean, just amazing. Everybody here is no masks, no mandatory vax, no lockdown, no second wave. Basically, people are reclaiming their freedom at last. Listen to it. Isn't it amazing?
And have some of the people been watching our show?
So many. When we were walking through the crowds, it was quite incredible. I kept getting stopped so people could take pictures with me, and it was.
All right, so you get the idea anyway. They were doing a live stream, and Sonia Poulton and Sean Atwood do a live stream on a Saturday evening that I like. So their coverage of most things is probably something I'm going to gravitate towards, because they tend to have they've got a quirky approach to things, but they're very incisive, and I like what they do. So there you go. There's 37 minutes, 38 minutes of that on YouTube. If you search for Sonia at London Demo, you'll find it. Now I'm going to go for the Neurolinguistic programming video that I was watching as well. I'll tell you what, we'll go for logical levels of change. This was Robert Dilts. Let's see if the shorter one's better. I think this is 13 minutes, so I might play all of it, because 13 minutes is okay, really. And there's good material in here, so I'll go over the model when it's finished.
Hi, it's Helen Oakwater, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here with the wonderful Robert Dilts, one of the developers of NLP, author of countless books. I only brought one of the ones that I have, coach, mentor to Google, Apple, the whole caboodle. If there is a guru and god of NLP, this is the man. This is the man. So Robert has agreed to come and talk about logical levels, which he created on the, you can explain, Gregory Bateson.
Okay.
We're going to keep it less than 15 minutes and look at logical levels, and then what does trauma do to logical levels?
So let's first, if we just start with the levels, and Helen has made an artistic drawing.
Rubbish drawing. Yeah, Beyond Identity at the top is in Robert's hands. The rest of the rubbish writing is mine.
But this is kind of gives an overview of this notion of different levels, as Helen was saying, that it's really sort of inspired by the work of Gregory Bateson, who was an anthropologist, but also one of the major founders of modern systems theory. And he had a concept and different levels of learning.
Different levels of change. Different levels.
These levels, he called it learning 1 and 2 and 3, which was kind of vague. It was kind of difficult to track. So what I was doing is saying, well, what does he mean by learning 1, learning 2? So basically what he was saying is that, okay, we know that we sort of concretely live in an environment. So, here we are in this room, with these constraints, with the sound that's here, and then all the activities that happen in our environment. Mm-hmm. And so we say that relates to, well, where and when. It's the most concrete part of our experience, right? The reason you can see this on the video is that we're in a concrete environment. But when we learn to do something in that environment or change our behavior in that environment. So our environment, we know, shapes what we do. And mm-hmm. So we say that's the what, this behavior level. Yeah. Now, interesting thing is our behavior is not only shaped by our behavior. The reason that we're having this conversation is not simply reacting to this environment. It's because there's something inside of us that we want to share and comment on. And so that has to do with what we call the sort of levels of skills and capabilities. Another way to describe that would be, it's kind of the mental model, the mental map that we are working from. So, this is a mental map, logical levels. Yeah. And so we're bringing it through our behavior into this environment. Mm-hmm. So right now, we are acting and interacting, but how do we know what to do? This idea, how do we know, is because, okay, there's some kind of understanding, there's some kind of skill. And I would say the skills are not only cognitive, there's also an emotional and the somatic process and the somatic, in neurolinguistic programming, we say there's a whole neuro part of that.
The whole body connection.
And that, of course, that is shaped partially by what happens in our ongoing environment, but also our memories of our past.
Yeah.
So this level starts to incorporate memory and what we've learned from our history. Now, we say the next level here is values and beliefs, which is, it is part of our inner programming, you can say, but it's a different level than how we do something or, what we've learned. It's a level of motivation. Yeah. We say it's about why.
Why?
And
what's important
and
to
what's
us.
important to us. And what we believe, this is the interesting thing, if something happens in my environment here, what do I believe that's going to lead to? What do I believe that's coming from? What do I believe it means? And this is very different than having some kind of an understanding, a cognitive understanding. It's really, there's a lot of, it's more than just thinking. There's emotion with it. Mm-hmm. There is a whole sense of, it's a whole feeling level, and literally is related to a different part of the brain than our sort of higher understanding. Mm-hmm. And so we would say this, and we say values and beliefs because it's all about what's important to us. Our beliefs relate to our values. I say, well, I believe this is going to be, I believe this is going to happen, and maybe that makes me feel unsafe, or I believe this is going to create that, and that's what I have a sense of, satisfaction or joy from that.
Okay, so I'm going to stop that for a little while there and just talk about it because. All right. I'm assuming I'm still happening on here. Yeah, looks like it. So what he said there was the values and beliefs part of the model is about how you feel about a situation. So feeling is the key to the Neville Goddard techniques, the Neville Goddard process. Feeling is the thing that is the manifestation key in Neville Goddard's work. And in this model of logical levels, when you get to values and beliefs, the one above that is identity. What I've been saying and what I'm working with as an assumption is that my beliefs about myself are what produce my environment. So it's a filtering process of sorts, but why would you want to filter in a whole lot of stuff that's going to limit you when you can filter it out? So I've been living within a lot of limitations, and I'm now starting to expand my filter to expand my environment, to expand possibilities. And it's really just a shift in the way you see the world, which comes from a shift in the way that I see myself. So I see myself as able to grasp and understand possibilities and opportunities, whereas before I didn't see myself in that way. So it's a change in my belief about myself that's producing a change in my environment. That's the link that I'm trying to make. I hope it makes sense to you. If you haven't heard the other programs, then it may not. You might want to go back in the archives and listen to the last 2 or 3 shows. The archives, incidentally, are included with the one or more of the Patreon donation levels. So they're free at the moment until the end of this month, which is only a couple of days away. And then to get access to the archives, you'll need to be a Patreon subscriber. You'll need to make a monthly donation of, I think it's $5 or $6 they're talking about. But whatever it turns out to be, the archive access will be included in it. Patreon will be able to tell you a bit more about that when you get to the sign-up page. It'll tell you. I haven't checked, so I don't know the details of that, but that's what they were talking about last time I heard. So let's go back to the video again. We've done 5 minutes, so we'll do about another 4 or 5 minutes, and then I'll stop it again.
So beliefs and values are really highly connected. And then there's this level of identity, which is who believes, right? Who knows? Who does? Who experiences? And that is actually something that's beyond our belief, right? That is sort of this, we say that's the deepest level, the sense of identity. Who I am, what am I about in this world? And then we often say that given the sense of identity, certainly our beliefs can shape our identity, but our identity also shapes our beliefs. If I believe I am a strong, healthy, resilient person, then I'm going to believe that I can get through certain things, I can transform things, I'm going to learn some things more easily than others, I'm going to do things that are differently than if I believe that on an identity level, I'm a victim, I'm helpless, I'm bad, I don't deserve things. So this sort of identity level is very key in shaping what our beliefs end up being, which beliefs we keep, which ones we form, etc. Now, we say there is a level beyond identity, and this is a very profound level, because this is this idea that we are also part of something bigger than ourselves. I mean, we know, okay, I am me, I am an independent person, but I'm part of a family. That's a very key place of, something bigger than me to which I belong. I can also be part of a community, a profession. I can be, some people have this very strong sense of being part of something beyond their own identity. It's, I'm part of a planet, I'm part of the human race, I'm part of, something much bigger. This is often the foundation of what people would call a spiritual experience. And by spiritual, we don't necessarily mean religion, although religions tend to be based on spiritual experiences. Religions tend to actually be more of belief systems. So now what happens is, of course, our reality is made up of all of those different levels. Yeah, So I'm in an environment, maybe something happens that triggers a belief of what I think might happen, that determines how I act or what I'm thinking. And what we find is that by being able to sort of get that sense, each of these levels can be both a resource, right? I can get support from my environment. I can do things that bring me greater sense of resourcefulness, the way I use my body, the way I use my posture. There's many, many ways in which our behavior is either going to be a resource for us,
be useful,
or be a limitation.
Yeah.
So you can have limiting environments. You can have, limiting behaviors, what you would call addictions or phobias and things like this. But those are often going to be connected also to ways of thinking. So my way of thinking can either be resourceful, I can be creative, or it can be limiting.
Yeah.
I can hold myself back. I can keep myself down. Same with these beliefs. Why I do things. The idea of these levels, by the way, and I think maybe it's important to suggest here, is that each level, in some ways, is less concrete, right? My belief I can't see it, I can't touch it. It's not as concrete as my environment, but it actually has sort of more impact on my behavior than even my environment does. Yeah. And we know that because two people can be in exactly the same environment. It can be a very supportive environment, or it can be a very dangerous environment, and they react completely differently.
Yeah, absolutely. And that maps across to my world of in traumatized children. Exactly. And the I am bad at that level.
Yeah.
What then falls out from that?
Yeah, because what happens is when, like we say, if I have an identity that I am bad, I am going to be much more prone to hold certain kinds of limiting beliefs. I mean, even the statement "I am bad" is already kind of a belief, but it's a belief that is reflecting. I mean, it's a verbal statement of something that you're experiencing inside that is not the belief, right? It's some sense of something fundamentally wrong inside.
Absolutely.
And then that forms these beliefs, and then these beliefs say, well, okay, so if I'm bad, I can't do this, I shouldn't do that, I am going to do this, I will, I'm going to be this way, in these situations throughout my life, and then that determines what we do and what feedback we get from the environment.
Absolutely. And I remember sitting in my first morning of NLP training and having this model presented, this very model, and realizing that beliefs drive behavior.
Yeah.
And I just sat back and went, oh my God, that's why this therapy works, and the impact of that on my kids. So in the last couple of minutes, can you just let us know how, and this is my metaphorical shrapnel for trauma. What happens when trauma impacts logical level? And you've got approximately 2 minutes to explain that.
Okay.
Well,
obviously, trauma starts here, right? It's something happens in my environment to me, and
like my earring falling off.
Yes, and then that begins to shape. Okay, that makes an impact on how I look at the world. That makes an impact on what I believe. That will even make an impact all the way up here to, who I am, and even what's my place in the world. This is the whole idea of neurolinguistic programming. There, especially as a child, you're forming a lot of, let's use an analogy to a computer, you're forming a lot of your basic programming. And that programming, the early programming, of course, determines it's going to influence what is possible to add to it, etc. So in this, you might even say it's kind of like what they call the operating system. And an identity especially relates to what you would call your operating system. So as a young child, you don't have many, you're not born with beliefs. You're not born with a lot of capabilities. I mean, you have some inborn things, but most of this is being shaped, especially, they say, the first 4 to 6 years of your life. That's developing a lot of this deepest level stuff that then it can become, it's a lot easier to sort of, let's say, this is what when Basin called learning 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Learning 1, okay, I can kind of adapt within the box, right? But there's a box there. Yeah. So to try to get out of that box, that's where beliefs come in, right? The belief creates the box. And so what we'd say is that very often you're going to have these belief and identity forming experiences. And like I say, it's a little bit like that's writing the operating system. Now, all the other software, okay, I can learn to add and subtract and speak a language, etc. But the deeper stuff, which determines how I feel that I am and what's meaningful, what's important, what I should do, that's all very much already in place.
And I remember you saying on Master Coach, this is where the magic happens.
That's where the magic
because
happens.
That's where the transformation happens.
Yeah.
And I think of it as if you change here,
Yeah.
and it like water, it
Yeah.
will just whoosh down,
Exactly.
and it transforms everything else.
It does.
So if you can change and help children of yourself, everyone
Who
change
and why?
at an identity level and change belief, then the skills and behaviors will fall out from it.
And if you don't, the metaphor I use, like trying to change in the skills and behaviors, would be like trying to save the Titanic by rearranging the chairs on the deck, right? It's the wrong level of change, right? I can rearrange the chairs all I want. It's not going to change the direction. So
Absolutely.
this is about the direction.
This is where the direction is. Okay, we are going to pause here for a minute and come.
All right, so that's the logical levels of change. It's Robert Dilts explaining it. I'll give you the channel name as well. The channel name is on Helen Oakwater's channel. The video is a couple of years old, but it's valid. Everything he says is valid. I've got to the same kind of language and the same kind of ideas through Neville Goddard and New Thought, but the similarities are there. So I wanted to, so it'll be easy for me really to shift from Neville Goddard to logical levels of change, because that's a model of what Neville Goddard's talking about, except that he's got I as I am God, and everybody else is God as well, which NLP kind of doesn't go quite there, but it goes to nobody is broken. Everything has a reason to be there that's a functional reason for whatever reason it is. It might be appropriate in one situation, not inappropriate behavior in another, or inappropriate thoughts in another. But at the time, it was the thing that was needed to happen. So that's not quite like saying everybody is God, but it's not too far away. It's saying everything is perfect for the situation that you're in. So there's no evil going on. It's just things that are happening. Now this gets a little bit controversial, because I don't want to talk about child abuse, because it's way too far beyond me. At the moment, I haven't got a logical, rational, reasonable way of explaining that, apart from people are motivated by sex, by sexual pleasure. That doesn't make it the right behavior when you're talking about a child, but it does explain the behavior. So if you're looking for an explanation, that's it. And a child doesn't have all that much choice in what's happening. So the situation is somebody who's looking for sexual pleasure, and they're aiming it at a child, which is totally inappropriate. But that's what they're doing. So that's a description of what's happening with that. And yeah, so then the child's got to sort out the mess that's created by the abuse. And the way to do that is partly to reform your identity, change your beliefs about yourself, change your behavior along the way. But it's very internal work. It's very psychological, spiritual work, philosophical work. You need the philosophical levels to be able to shift everything else. The philosophical level is the I in this model. It's the one that cascades down into beliefs, into skills and capabilities, into behavior, and into environment. So when you change your sense of who you are, or my sense of who I am in this particular case, then that feeds out. So it's not just feedback that you're getting from the environment. Your sense of who you are feeds out into the environment as well. So it is a feedback loop, but it's a sense of who you are that creates the thing that feeds back. So if you want a simple example, if you want to see love, if you want love in the world, love yourself. Very simple. If you become love, then it's not possible for anything to exist in a world where you are love. Same with beauty. Same with the good or truth. If you become the thing that you want to see the world in the world, then that's what you'll filter in, and anything that doesn't match that, well, everything is truth ultimately on one level or another, but you want the highest level of truth that you can possibly get to, really. You want the most truth that you can handle at any particular point in time. Sometimes you might not be able to deal with everything that's there. And I've been in situations where I haven't been able to deal with everything that's there. I've dealt with it, in the best way I could. So I have dealt with it, but I'd rather not have been in the situation in that particular way. Anyway, so you might not always want the thing that's there in your environment, but you have to deal with it. That's the way the world is. Let me see if there's anything else I can do. It's a two-part video, this, but I don't really want to play both parts because I've covered most of what I wanted to do with logical levels for this week anyway. Let me see what else we've got here. We've got 7 minutes on neurological levels. I don't know whether this is quite the same thing, but it might be. Let's see if it's the same thing.
Today, I want to introduce you to the idea of neurological levels. This is a concept pioneered by Robert Dilts back in the early days of NLP, but somehow it seems to have been overlooked in a lot of modern NLP training. Some schools of NLP still include it and spend a lot of time using it, but others have disregarded it. So if you haven't come across this model before, I really encourage you to explore it in more detail. The notion of neurological levels is that it's a way of distinguishing which part of somebody's experience they're currently paying attention to. So the model has 5 or sometimes 6 levels, depending on which version you look at. And generally we begin at the bottom of the model and work upwards. So the lowest level is the level of environment. So this answers questions like where and when. That's telling us about the context in which something is happening. The next level up is behaviour. That's simple. That's about what are people doing, what activity is taking place. And that answers questions about what is going on. Often, that's the area that most people are interested in, sort of everyday conversations. That's the kind of thing that people usually ask each other about, what's happening. Moving up the model from there, the third level up is the level of capability. So this is all about skills and it's about strategy. It tells us how whatever is going on is actually happening. Now that's quite different from looking at behaviour, because the behaviour is the end result of the capability. So in order to do something, somebody has to have a skill that produces that behaviour. Moving up from there, the fourth level up is the level of values and beliefs. So this is often outside of a person's conscious awareness. Often we don't really know what we believe in a situation. We're not always completely clear about our values. But nonetheless, this is a very powerful area of our experience because the combination of beliefs and values also drive behaviour. So the beliefs and values level answers questions about why somebody is doing what they're doing. It's about personal motivation. Above that, we've then got the fifth level, which is the level of identity. This is about who's doing what and why and how and so on. Now, this can be fairly straightforward in terms of, who is that person, and we can give a person a name. But also, it's quite subtle because everybody has their own unique sense of self. Who you think you are ties into what you will then do or why you will do it. Things that you wouldn't do all come from your sense of self. And that can be hard to put into words. It's quite difficult to pin down. For a lot of people, it's more of an emotional experience. It's a feeling they have about who they are. Nonetheless, it's very, very powerful, because if you're asked to do something that goes against who you think you are, it's going to be really hard for you to do that. Now, beyond that, we have a level that's called beyond identity. Sometimes it's known as a spiritual level, but I think it's more useful and more general just to think of it as beyond identity, because that's where we're thinking about ourselves as part of something that's bigger than just myself. So when you think about yourself as part of a team or part of a community, part of your family, and yes, it could be in a spiritual sense that you're thinking about yourself as being part of something much greater. What that does is it takes the focus away from self and puts us in a different kind of context. So I said at the beginning that the environment level, the very bottom level, is about context, but also when we get right to the top, we're providing a different kind of context. Now, lots of people have seen this model and kind of shrugged their shoulders and said, okay, so what? The place it really comes in useful is when you've got problem solving to do. Because one of the simplest things you can do if you've got a problem to solve is to, first of all, identify which neurological level is the problem represented at. And then to solve the problem, all you need to do is go to a different level. I'll give you an example. Suppose a friend comes to visit you and they bring their Labrador puppy as well. Now, whether or not you're a dog lover, having a Labrador puppy in your house could be quite a traumatic experience, especially if it's not yet completed its puppy training. So here you are, you've got a dog running around the house, threatening your favourite ornaments, maybe your carpet or whatever else that happens to be in the line of sight. What's the problem there? Well, the problem is the dog's behaviour. So the dog's running around, it's out of control. You could say that's the problem. Okay, so let's go to a different neurological level, because if we stay at the same neurological level, the only change we could make is to try and change the dog's behaviour. Well, if the puppy hasn't completed its puppy training, changing its behaviour might be quite hard. So let's change, for example, the environment. What does that mean? Well, take it outside into the garden or take it for a walk in the park. The dog carries on doing the same thing it's been doing. It runs around, barks, makes a noise, jumps up and down, whatever else. It's not a problem in a different environment. Now, you may say that's common sense, and that's, what's the point of that? I tell you that just as a trivial example to say, by shifting neurological levels, the solution to the problem becomes obvious. We could also go to a higher level. So suppose you've got an important presentation to make to the board, and you're practicing doing it, and it's really not.
All right, that's enough of that one. I'll give you the channel. The name of the video is Brilliant Minds Blog, Neurological Levels. It's on Diane Rowther's channel. That's a good 4 or 5 minute explanation of logical levels of change. So I'm happy with that. So we've covered everything I want to do about that now. 2 different explanations, including beyond identity, for me works because that's my philosophical level. That's the level that shifts everything. If you change at a philosophical level, yes, it's a belief, but it's a belief that's bigger than me. So if it's my belief about the world or my belief about the universe and my place in the universe, then a tiny shift in that can be a huge shift in my personal environment. And that's what I was talking about, the butterfly effect last week. So that's an example of a butterfly effect. It's a change in my relationship with philosophically with God or with the universe or with reality. When I shift the way that I feel about me within the context of everything, then everything shifts. If that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, let's see if I can get back to the chat room. Here we go. I don't know whether Boy Solomon's still there, but thanks for the feedback earlier on anyway. So there's still quite a few people talking in the chat room. It's text chat, and you'll find that at Freedom Slips neurological.com or revolution.radio. There's a link to the chat room. You've got to sign up, but it's once you've signed up, once you've been through the process, it's easy to get back in now. There were one or two technical issues a few weeks ago, but they've all sorted themselves out. So I would recommend it. I would suggest that people go along there because there's a community there, and you'll find lots of links to resources. I don't think Skype's working quite as well as I thought it was, so I'm gonna go back to YouTube and see if we can find something else to play. I know I'm relying on YouTube videos, but it's either that or read Wikipedia or something like that. I could play a bit of Neville Goddard to finish off. We've got 10 minutes, 15 minutes left. So back to Neville Goddard for the last 15 minutes or so. I'll just start from where I was at on this one, called At Your Command.
Of being that which you desire. Just how this desire, or newly attained consciousness, will embody itself, no man knows. For I, or the newly attained consciousness, has ways that ye know not of. Its ways are past finding out. Do not speculate as to the how of this consciousness embodying itself, for no man is wise enough to know the how. Speculation is proof that you have not attained to the naturalness of being the thing desired, and so are filled with doubts. You are told, he who lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, that gives to all liberally and upbraideth not. And it shall be given unto him. But let him ask not doubting, for he who doubts is as a wave of the sea that is tossed and battered by the winds. And let not such a one think that he shall receive anything from the Lord. You can see why this statement is made. For only upon the rock of faith can anything be established. If you have not the consciousness of the thing, you have not the cause or foundation upon which thing is erected. A proof of this established consciousness is given you in the words, "Thank you, Father." When you come into the joy of thanksgiving so that you actually feel grateful for having received that which is not yet apparent to the sense, you have definitely become one in consciousness with the thing for which you gave thanks. God, your awareness, is not mocked. You are ever receiving that which you are aware of being, and no man gives thanks for something which he has not received. Thank you, Father, is not, as it is used by many today, a sort of magical formula. You need never utter aloud the words, "Thank you, Father." In applying this principle, as you rise in consciousness to the point where you are really grateful and happy for having received the thing desired, you automatically rejoice and give thanks inwardly. You have already accepted the gift, which was but a desire before you rose in consciousness, and your faith is now the substance that shall clothe your desire. His name is not a name that you pronounce with the lips. You can ask forever in the name of God or Jehovah or Christ Jesus, and you will ask in vain. Name means nature, so when you ask in the nature of a thing, results ever follow. To ask in the name is to rise in consciousness and become one in nature with the thing desired. Rise in consciousness to the nature of the thing, and you will become that thing in expression. Therefore, what things soever ye desire, when ye pray, believe that you receive them, and ye shall receive them. Praying, as we have shown you before, is recognition, the injunction to believe that ye receive in first person present tense. This means that you must be in the nature of the things asked for before you can receive them. To get into the nature easily, general amnesty is necessary. We are told, "Forgive if ye have aught against any." that your Father also, which is in heaven, may forgive you. But if ye forgive not, neither will your Father forgive you. This may seem to be some personal God who is pleased or displeased with your actions, but this is not the case. Consciousness being God, if you hold in consciousness anything against man, you are binding that condition to your world. But to release man from all condemnation is to free yourself so that you may rise to any level necessary. There is therefore no condemnation to those in Christ Jesus. Therefore, a very good practice before you enter into your meditation is first to free every man in the world from blame. For law is never violated, and you can rest confidently in the knowledge.
Okay, so that's Neville Goddard's way of saying that nothing is broken. And he obviously says there is no blame. So if nobody's broken, then they're just doing the best thing that they can do at that time based on their motivations and their environment. Then there is no blame. So you have to just let the blame go. It's a way of saying forgive everybody. So to be able to forgive everybody, you have to forgive yourself. That's the way this works in the logical levels of change model that we were just talking about. So if the I is carrying blame for something, that's one of the things that will be filtered in to the environment that you see. So if you let go of the blame, so you forgive yourself for whatever it is you were blaming yourself for, then you start to not see things that are blameworthy in the outside world. I know that's a bit convoluted, but that's kind of how it works. So, I mean, I've been working through some anger issues, which is Revolution Radio is a perfect place to work through anger issues because you can just let it out. And I tend to just let it go rather than letting it out, which it's the same thing ultimately, but I don't necessarily vocalize it. I don't necessarily verbalize everything that I'm feeling. But that's my process at the moment, is forgiveness, letting go of anger, letting go of blame. So I want to just let you know where you can find me online. And one of the places you can find me online at the moment is on Discord. I set up a Discord server for the radio station, for the radio show rather. So if you look for Free Association Radio Show Live on Discord, then you'll find that server. It's a voice chat server and text chat as well. So I'm post any video that I'm using on the radio show, I'm posting the radio shows in there. I'm posting the videos that I'm doing as research in there as well as freeassociationradioshow.com, which goes to the website. I do the same thing there. And there's a couple of other projects I wanted to mention, one of which is Imagination Creates Reality.live, which is live events on Skype. Well, at the moment, just Zoom, but at some point when there's enough people, it'll be Skype and Zoom, and we'll do some meditations and some watching videos and talking and support in terms of manifestation there. That's a project I've had going for about a month. The other one that I've had going for about a month is the Cancer Cure Mastermind Group.com, which will be, again, live Zoom support and live Skype support for people working their way through issues around their health, mostly. I've done similar things. I did a similar thing on Academy about 15 years ago, which is a group that we called at the time Physician Heal Thyself, which was for coaches and health professionals and alternative practitioners, complementary health practitioners, and that was quite successful. So this time round, I'm focusing specifically on cancer, but then everything else around cancer as well. So there's lots of health issues that potentially happen before cancer. So I'm not claiming to cure anything, but we're just going to support and post resources and talk about potential cures. So it's up to individuals to sort their own health out. I can't do that for anybody. But I can host the resource that enables the conversations to happen. So that's what I've decided to do with that. And once again, it's cancercuremastermindgroup.com, that one. And you can also find me on Twitter, or Dennis Barker, Dennis with 2 N's on Twitter. So those are the main places. There's a radio station set up as well, which is radioprojects.co.uk. So there's not very much of me personally there at the moment, but I will at some point work out a way to broadcast live to the radio show and to the Discord voice chat while I'm doing the Skype, and hopefully find a way to broadcast on YouTube and Facebook at the same time, so I don't have to keep recording and posting everything everywhere. But I'll work that out as I go along. But at the moment, the radio show and the websites are the place you can find me. Once again, I just remind people that Revolution Radio is listener supported. It's a community. It's run by volunteers. The tech support is volunteers. The broadcasting is volunteers. The production is volunteers. So nobody takes anything from the money that's given by donations. You can go to revolution.radio. You'll see a Patreon button there, a red Patreon button. If you want access to the archives, take a look at the different levels of donation, different scales of donation that you can give, because at least one of them is going to give you access to the archives. As yet, I haven't checked it, so I don't know which ones it'll be. But the archives are free for the next 2 days. Then they stop being free, and you'll need to be a Patreon subscriber to get access to the archive. So I recommend you do that. You'll find that link at revolution.radio. I'm in the process of downloading archives at the moment. MacDonald in the Morning and the Mechanics Roundtable, and also the Red Pill Roundtable I like as well. There's quite a few shows that I like. So I rely on the archives because I'm working 5 days a week. So I'm contributing to the Patreon specifically so I can get access to the archives. I've been doing that for a while. So I recommend you do that. That's a good way to support the station, and you'll get access to a lot of material in the archives. I also recommend that you go down to the chat room, which is at revolution.radio. Make some contact with the community there. If you've got resources to share, you can share them in the chat room. Everybody's sharing their own specific research. I'll be back at 4 o'clock UK time next week. See you on Saturday again. Thanks for listening.